Chapter 2. Rosso. Alonzo. The look on her face. Her brown eyes hold horror, like she had just seen a ghost, if only that were the case. Her breathing becomes much more rapid than it previously was. Her eyes watch as I slide my black glove off, the last droplets of blood dripping onto the cold concrete. You shouldn't be here, I growl deeply. As I take a step closer, she takes a step back, hitting into the brick wall behind her. Why are you here? Her lips quiver as she tries to speak. Her mascara drops down her flushed cheeks, and her eyes frantically sweep our surroundings. I... She gulps. Well? She stares at the beat-up and freshly deformed face of the man behind me. Small pools of blood exude around his unconscious body. She's so terrified she won't even glance at me. Answer me, I say, my voice sounding more authoritative than I intended. Her brown eyes swell. I can tell she's trying her damnedest not to cry. Wrong place, wrong time, she murmurs, not allowing herself to make eye contact with me. My youngest brother Attilio steps into the room, his white dress shirt stained with fresh blood, Merlot-colored smears across his face. His eyes are quick to land on the small woman in front of me. His smirk is always sinister. Alonzo, he speaks in our native tongue. Who's this fine little piece? This is Miss Barlow. She looks up at me as I say her name, clearly talking about her. Easy on the eyes. His smirk still prominent. He walks around the front of her, his eyes wandering astray, and focusing on certain aspects of her body like a typical man. He licks his lips. There are things I'd like to do to you. He cackles like the maniac he is. Attilio. His eyes study her features, taking a step closer. He's fixated. Attilio! I growl, snapping him out of his apparent trance. He drags his finger along her collarbone before picking up her necklace and rubbing it between his fingers. Beautiful necklace, he tells her. She stays silent. He grabs the hem of her skirt, fondling the material. I'd like... Gripping his shoulder, I roughly pull him back. Leave. He rolls his eyes, as he always does. His eyes trail her body once more, whispering derogatory remarks and wolf whistling before exiting the room, leaving the two of us in silence. What are you really doing here, Miss Barlow? Her eyes stay glued to the ground. I came to give your father the money back, and I must have made a wrong turn. My mistake. I hold back my grin that dares to make an appearance. Where's the bouncer that stands by the doors? He was flirting with a woman and told me I knew where to go. I know just exactly who he was flirting with. Looks like he's a dead man walking. Padre walks in with two bouncers at his side, one of them unaware of his fate. His eyes shift from me to Elsie. Oh, Miss Barlow, what precisely might you be doing back here? I explained to him what she told me and how David was flirting with Athena. David's eyes nearly bulge out of his head, knowing full well what he's in for. Padre looks to David without saying a word. He crosses his arms over his outstretched chest. Alonzo tells me you no longer want the money. Is that correct? She nods her head, clasping her hands insecurely in front of her. Yes, Mr. Moretti. Okay. He clears his throat. I was very generous to give you the money in the first place. Yes, and I'm very appreciative of it. I didn't even open the envelope. His brown eyes squint like he's trying to make sense of this whole thing. He looks to Attilio, who just entered the room. We agreed to a 6-month agreement over the phone, yes? Yes. Then 6 months is what you're going to give me, Miss Barlow. I'm sorry. He chuckles. I don't just hand out money to anybody. You verbally agreed to give me 6 months to pay your loan back. For you to return this money, I still require 6 months of payment. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay me back with currency. Elsie has no say in the matter whether she agrees to it or not. Attilio smiles smugly. I have an idea, Padre. What might that be? He inquires, an eyebrow raised, waiting for Attilio's response. Make her one of my call girls. We could easily double the profit with a face and body like that. Her eyes widen. No. Or I'd keep her to myself. He bites his lower lip and cracks his neck. Padre walks in a circle around her, examining as much as he can possibly see through her conservative clothing. The two of them exchange their distinctive smirks. Not half bad, Attilio. She looks utterly defeated, knowing she can't possibly get out of whatever they decide. Her fate is no longer in her own hands. Her brown eyes meet mine like she's begging me to save her. I'll deal with her, I speak up. They turn to look at me. Padre looks taken aback. It isn't like you to mix business and pleasure. He waves me off and shoves her in my direction, causing her to land on her hands and knees. Do what you will. He snaps and everyone leaves. Her black hair drops in front of her face. I can hear her faintly sobbing. Kneeling, I offer my hand. She brushes her hair out of her face, her cheeks pink and eyes vaguely red. She reluctantly grabs my hand with her small one. Helping her up, I take notice of her skinned knees, one worse than the other, blood seeping down to her white sneakers and a bruise already wanting to form. I pick up her bag and lay the strap on her shoulder. Come with me. I lay my hand on the middle of her back, gently nudging her. She stays at my side as we return to her car. Get your belongings. I hold the door open as she gathers a few small items and her coat. Is that all? Once she nods, I grab her bicep, forcing her into the passenger seat of my car. Where are we going? My place. What are you going to do to me? She asks, fidgeting with her fingers in her lap. Keep you alive. I have a dog. I love her like she's my child. I don't want anything to happen to her. Turning the car around, I head to her place. How do you know where I live? My father keeps tabs on all his clients. I'm the one that makes those tabs. Oh. Pulling into the driveway, I park and open the door for her. Following closely behind, her dog greets her at the door and shortly greets me, jumping on my leg. I baby talk to her in Italian so Elsie hasn't a clue what I'm saying. May I grab some clothes? No, I'll get you new ones. She hoists her dog into her arms and sits in the back with her.
He pulls into an enormous garage and turns the car off. Opening my door, he helps me out. Upon stepping into his luxurious home, we are greeted by a Malinois wagging his tail. This is Miko. He introduces me and proceeds to talk to Miko in Italian. Hi, Miko. I kneel down and scratch his chin. Miko and Poppy sniff each other before darting off to play. He gestures for me to follow him. We enter a huge and beautiful kitchen, flecks of silver specks embedded into the countertops. You can set your things there. He points to the table. Here, sit. He pulls out a bar stool at the kitchen island. As I take a seat, he swirls the chair to face him, his face awfully close to mine, his fresh, warm breath hitting me. He forcefully grasps my leg, making me jump in my seat. He pushes my skirt up my thigh to expose my knee. I must have been so terrified I didn't realize I scuffed up my knee so badly. I'm so ashamed for ever allowing myself to accept a supposed loan from a bigwig businessman. I never got a bad vibe from Mr. Moretti. He came highly recommended for loans from a fellow co-worker and reviews online. He was made to sound like the man he's not. I've made a mess of my life after both of my parents died. I was close with my parents and losing them killed a part of me. I had no one to turn to during that time in my life. For the last 4 years, I've been living on credit cards and tips these days are smaller and don't go nearly as far as they once did. Everybody's budget is tight. Lake Birch is a beautiful coastal town in the New England region. I was born and raised here. I never thought about leaving until these last few months everything has skyrocketed and I just can't afford to live in my puny old home anymore. My skirt reveals a little too much thigh to my comfort, which is what pulls me back to reality. Sliding my skirt further down, the man eyeballs me. He gingerly lays a clear bandage on my fresh wound and cleans up the blood that has dripped down my shin. Thank you, I mumble, rubbing my scratched hand. He takes notice of the dried blood on my palm. His deep olive hand grabs mine, dabbing what I assume is disinfectant on it. What's your name? I ask. His eyes meet my gaze. Alonzo.